Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. We're going to talk about some running backs now as part of our running back roundtable. We have an NFL running back with us, and Robert Turbin. He's going to give us sort of the NFL/fantasy view on these running back situations. Then Heath will give you the fantasy take, and I'll kind of jump in here whenever it's necessary. But let's start with the first situation that we're talking about. And do we have a Breece Hall problem? 10.5 PPR points or less in each of his last two games. Braylon Allen's getting work. 2 games ago against the Patriots, for example, he scored a touchdown. So, Robert, when you look at the Jets and the passing game starting to pick up, we saw a 3-touchdown game for Aaron Rodgers. Devontae Adams scored. Garrett Wilson scored twice. One of the best catches you'll see with what he did against the Texans last week. But Breece Hall is just not having the fun yet. Are we going to get some fun for Breece Hall for his fantasy managers as well?
I don't know. This one is a tough one. They should, if I'm looking at it just from a pure football standpoint, but from a fantasy standpoint, I'm not so sure how much we can continue to trust Breece Hall when he's not getting the work. And you got Braylon Allen taking carries and opportunities from him, and then an offense that's centered around the passing game and Aaron Rodgers and the quarterback. So I think we do have a Breece Hall problem. I think you should still roster him, but he's no longer an RB1 in this situation.
I think right alongside Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr., this is the guy that you need to go buy. Again, schedule gets fantastic down the stretch. Maybe see a little bit more running when the weather gets a little bit colder there in New York. And while we are not unhappy with the Braylon Allen touchdown, it's still been at least 17 touches in each of his last 4 games. If Breece Hall's touching the ball 17 times per game, he's going to score a lot more than 10.5 fantasy points per game rest of season.
I just wish that they would throw him the ball a little bit more. Since Adams joined the roster, the receptions have gone down. Maybe that's something that we can get going a little bit. This is not an easy matchup against the Cardinals, so just keep that in mind when it comes to the Jets' passing attack. So maybe this could be a Breece Hall game. Hopefully he takes advantage of it. For what it's worth, DeAndre Swift just had 7 catches against the Cardinals last week in the loss for the Bears. Next topic for the running backs that we're talking about. Can we trust anyone in the Jacksonville backfield, Robert? Because we saw Travis Etienne return, and it was bad news for Tank Bigsby. Bigsby had been building towards something. Maybe it was just a bad matchup against the Eagles, but it's not an easy matchup this week against the Vikings. But when you look at Etienne and you look at Bigsby, is there anyone you think that's a safe start for fantasy managers?
Well, the safest start is going to be Etienne because the Jaguars, it just feels like that's their guy. That's the guy that they trust in him most. If it were me as a fantasy manager, I would lean towards Travis Etienne. But as far as trusting either one of these guys overall from a production standpoint, very difficult at this moment in time. I feel like both of them are flex guys at this point.
I am really interested to see what the target breakdown looks like this week. Tank Bigsby just completely disappeared from the passing game as soon as Etienne came back, which we pretty much expected, but Etienne did fumble a catch into an interception. It wasn't a fumble. He just bounced off of his hands that he could have caught. I wonder, they've been penalizing guys for that this year. So I wonder if Etienne takes a step back, but for now, they're just touchdown-dependent flexes. And
then we had Dearness Johnson getting some goal line opportunities. It was just a weird game against the Eagles, but maybe that factored in with Etienne coming back, the bad play, and Bigsby just not being effective. So if there's 3 guys, it's definitely a situation to avoid. But hopefully it's just these 2. Bigsby used on first and second down from a running perspective, and then Etienne maybe a little bit more in the passing down work. But I agree with Robert. I think Etienne is the one you'd want to lean on if you have to make a choice of the 2. Next topic here, we have about the Carolina Panthers. So we don't know for sure if Jonathon Brooks is going to be activated. If he's not activated this week and playing, he's going to be shut down for the rest of the season. But we hope that we get to see him a little bit because I'd like to see what the Panthers have and certainly what he can be for fantasy managers moving forward. So, Robert, what's the expectation if Brooks does play, starting with the game against the Giants, and they have a bye week? But rest of season schedule is not easy. Chuba Hubbard's been one of the best fantasy running backs this season, certainly one of the best values. So how do you see this Carolina backfield shaping up if Brooks does play?
I think Brooks is going to get 6 to 8 carries, and if he looks well, they're going to build upon that, as the season continues to prolong. And then you'll see less production, I think, from Chuba Hubbard eventually. If he doesn't do well, Chuba Hubbard is going to continue to be what he's been all season. But this is a team that I think is more focused on rebuilding as opposed to winning right now, and Jonathon Brooks is no doubt a part of their future. And so if he does well with those 6 to 8 carries, those opportunities are going to continue to go up rest of season.
I think I haven't projected for 7 rush attempts, so we're in lockstep there. I think this week you can still start Chuba Hubbard. It's a great matchup against the Giants, giving up the 2nd most yards per attempt to opposing running backs. I'd be a little bit worried if I was counting on Chuba to be my RB2 in the fantasy playoffs. I think by that point, if Brooks comes back this week, Brooks could have a much larger role.
So are you actively shopping Hubbard if you have him, Heath? Or are you just looking to say, okay, listen, you get him for this week, he should be awesome, but we know it could happen?
Yeah, he's a hard guy to sell right now because all season long everybody's been viewing him as the guy who's about to get replaced by Jonathan Brooks, and now this is the deadline. So his value could really change a lot if Brooks is not activated, but right now it seems like everybody expects that. I'd almost be in that if I'm desperate for a running back, see if I can buy Hubbard a little bit cheaper right now as a 1-week rental, and then maybe he turns into a rest of the season starter.
All right, so we'll see what happens with the Panthers. Maybe we get an answer by the end of the day. Again, check out CBSSports.com. They do play in Germany, so they have an early start on Sunday as they take on the Giants. All right, last topic that we'll talk about here for a running back roundtable is, Robert, we got to just give some praise to Najee Harris. He's got 3 straight games with over 100 yards rushing. They're coming off their bye week. Things for the offense look better with Russell Wilson. Is it just time to say Najee Harris is an easy start, or do you have some concern because Jaylen Warren, now back for 2 games, going to play on passing downs, and maybe the bubble will burst on Najee Harris knowing that he hasn't done this very often since his rookie season?
No, I think he's an easy start. RB2 to a flex. There's no doubt about it. Russell Wilson has provided a different dynamic to this offense where it's like, opposing defenses have to be aware of the passing game. Not that Justin Fields couldn't throw the football, but it was just a different type of offense. Now you're getting beat over the top with Russell Wilson. So what does that do? That lightens up the box for Najee Harris, less defenders in there, and that's where you're starting to see some of the success that he's having over 100 yards the last 3 games. And so I think he's a start. If you have him on your roster and there's no one better, absolutely, RB2.
Definitely an easy start this week. A top 15 running back for me this week has a very good matchup. And then the schedule turns terrible. This is a guy that after this week I would be looking to sell high. Faces Baltimore next week. In the fantasy playoffs, he goes up against Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Kansas City. It doesn't get any worse than that in terms of a running back schedule.
Yeah, I had a trade offer for Najee Harris. The first thing I looked at was, okay, what's coming up for him? I'm like, oh, no, I don't want that less down the stretch. But look, he has done better. Arthur Smith, we know, has gotten great production out of his running backs, and that was the hope for Najee Harris, playing for a contract after they took away his fifth year option. So it's been fun to watch. So hopefully he does take advantage of this Commanders defense. It should be in your starting lineups for week number 10. All right, let's answer one of your questions. Again, we have a mailbag coming up at the end of the show, so we'll get to a lot more of those then. But we got a question here about a couple running backs and a wide receiver. You got J.K. Dobbins, Tyrone Tracy, or Zay Flowers in half PPR, and then also Tyrone Tracy or Chase Brown. So Heath, I'll let you take the first part of it. Rob, you take the second part. So J.K. Dobbins, Tyrone Tracy, Zay Flowers, which one of those 3 guys do you want?
Man, I like Zay Flowers a lot, even in half PPR, which normally I'd take the running back over him in that format. He's just been so good, especially after the catch. This is a great matchup against Cincinnati. I'm starting Zay Flowers.
All right, so Zay Flowers over Dobbins and Tracy. Great options. I hate to bench any of those guys. And then, Robert, would you go Tyrone Tracy or Chase Brown? Tracy gets the Panthers, Brown gets the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm going Tyrone Tracy going up against the Carolina Panthers. There's no doubt about that. He's been good when he's gotten his opportunity and been healthy. That's the guy I'm trusting in that situation.
Yep, he's absolutely blown away Devin Singletary. And look, he's blown away fantasy managers with his production over the last month. So taking on the Panthers should be a great situation for him. It's tough between him and Flowers for me in the other question as well. So hopefully Zay Flowers does deliver because Tyrone Tracy putting him on the bench is not fun to do in week number 10. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back. It's going to be start, bench, cut. We'll tell you who should be in your lineup, who should be on your bench, and who you're kicking to the curb. That's next on FFT.